Dark Souls. So we are talking about Dark Souls this week. It's our final game of some other year for 2011 nominee. And originally released in September 2011, coming out on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 at the same time, boys.
Yep.
Yep. And then later coming on lots of different consoles, PC, Switch, ups and downs in terms of the, the remaster, or not remake, no, remaster, sorry. But yeah, so you guys, like maybe just to give a bit of background, Swinny, you bought this day one, is that right?
Yep. Got it day one.
And did you play it straight away or?
Yep. Jumped straight in. So it's been a long time coming for us to talk about this in depth. So.
And Mike, you bought it day one.
Same.
Did you play day one as well?
I did. I believe I did. Yeah, I bought it day one, and I pretty sure I played it day one as well. Yeah.
And also, like, had you guys played Demon's Souls?
So I hadn't, but I thought Mike had.
No, I actually hadn't. I went and played Demon Souls, I think, after I played Dark Souls. I started playing Demon Souls, and then I think, if my memory serves me correct, I got Dark Souls, played it, loved it, and then I went back to Demon Souls.
Well, that's what I meant. You'd at least played Demon Souls.
Yeah, I played like the very starting area, if you could call it that. Yeah. So I was kind of fresh to the series as well. I think I wasn't. I hadn't played Demon Souls enough to really feel like I was into the series yet. I only literally played the Bolterra Castle at the start, and that's it. And I put the game down on PlayStation. So when this came out on 360, it was kind of new.
I just know that there was so Demon Souls was just so revered by such a small audience of the gaming community that, and then when you combine that with the buzz and the hype and the marketing from Bandai Namco of the whole Prepare to Die thing, man, this game blew up.
And it was a bit of a reaction to the times, right? Because I was sort of getting out of games at this time. You know, I remember saying to you, Swinny, lots about just games are too easy. There's no consequences for death. It's no choices, which I think is fair criticism of most of the AAA games that were coming out at the time.
Still.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I say that with like Uncharted. It's sort of like you just could just run up against everything in that game, and it's like fine. But this game, wow, okay, this was pretty different.
Yeah, it gave people what I think was missing from that level. You know, that I don't know if you'd call this game a AAA release at the time. Obviously, the series has turned into a AAA series now, but there was a hole in the gaming market for this level of release, and the Soul series kind of kicked off a bit of a mini revolution around games that are willing to punish players and be more challenging than your Assassin's Creeds and, as you said, your Uncharted's and stuff. Games that essentially have no real penalty for death and stuff, or failure.
Yeah.
Whereas this one really did. But I think it's and this is a core part of the series, it's the challenge that gives you the satisfaction in the game. The fact that overcoming and learning the tactics and being able to survive really tough encounters and finally defeat a boss that you got stuck on for a couple of hours or whatever it is because your strategy was shit or you didn't have the right gear or whatever. I think very few games have been as satisfying as this game as a result of how difficult it is.
So Intergot, I guess we didn't cover your experience with what you've played this on and when.
Yeah. So for me, I remember talking to you about this at the time, and you're like,
"You gotta play it.
You gotta play this Dark Souls game.
It's so good."
This is like 10 years ago. You gotta play this Dark Souls game. It's sort of saying everything that you hate about games. It's the opposite of it. It's like addressing everything. I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah, whatever. And man, I'm so glad we did this segment. This game is so good. I love this game so much. I was chatting to you guys sort of offline. I have mentioned on the podcast as well that I have beaten this game. So and when I say that, I've been, defeated the final boss. I haven't gone through every single component of the DLC or sort of the side components of it. And we'll get into how the game's structured and, the branching paths and choices you can make and everything like that, I'm sure at some stage. But yeah, so I only played this game recently. So it's pretty much exclusively on the PlayStation 5, actually, the PS4 version of it. So the remastered version with all the DLC and everything. And yeah, this game, I think the obsession about saying this game's hard it's more just like the game is very consequential. Like you do things and there are consequences. So that's all the way from NPCs to just, your tactics. If you don't try to learn how to parry and techniques in the game that they do try to make it clear you need to know, you just screw yourself in the long run. Like if I look at, even the final boss of the game, and I don't want to do spoilers or anything like that too much.
I think just to get ahead of it, there are going to be some minor spoilers in this segment. So because there's some stuff we have to talk about. So.
Yeah, definitely. And look, like I think it's more structured. Like I'm not specifically trying to spoil anything in the game unnecessarily, but there will be things that we talk about that obviously are spoilers. But like if you look at the final boss, if you don't know how to parry, that's actually one of the most difficult bosses to beat. If you know how to parry, it's like a joke almost. Like it's almost too easy of a boss. But I feel like that's kind of part of the point. Like I love this game. Like we'll chat about it at length. But honestly, this game's probably already in maybe like it's definitely in my top 20. It might already be in my top 10 games. It's just so good. It's like I've had that one run through, and then like I said to you guys, I beat the game and I just was like, sitting back and, Miyazaki, he talks about, he wants the game to feel like an accomplishment. And like, that's the style of game. It's not that it's hard. It's just, you've done something to get through the game and you've accomplished something and you do it your way, whatever that means. Like, and there's lots of options in this game. And that's honestly what I felt. And I was just sitting there going, like, I'm so glad I bloody got through this game. I didn't know if I'd be able to beat it. And then I'm sitting there and the credits roll and then the game starts up again. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like, all right, I'll start playing New Game Plus. And then I got all the way to ring the first bell again. And I'm like, I got to stop because I'm going to just start like a full second playthrough.
It's really addictive.
It's the kind of game that lingers with you. And because when I first played it through, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was like in my top 10 when I first played it through. But then, when I did a couple more playthroughs over the years and I've, beaten it, recently late last year again a couple of times. It's like it just lingers with you, and I think your appreciation for it just grows and grows, even when you're not playing it. It's such a weird game in that sense, the experience, where I think it slowly becomes a lot of people's favorite game just from having gone through the experience over time. It's weird.
It's like a virus. It just spreads, and you can't control it. You can't help yourself.
Well, it's like any good art where it, like to me, this is just my perspective, that it doesn't, it's not heavy-handed in what it's trying to say. And really great art allows for possibilities of your own interpretation of what things mean and why and everything. And I feel like almost like Swinny and I disagree with some parts, like, I know, and I understand where Swinny's coming from. He's sort of like, do this side part or do this, and I'm like, I just didn't, like when I was playing through the first time, and as I said, I didn't do all the DLC. I did some of it. I didn't go back to all the areas. I didn't do all the areas I could do, but it made sense for my playthrough and what I wanted from the game and what I was enjoying from the game, if that makes sense. And I feel like partly that is the point of the game. It's sort of meant to be experienced in the way you want to experience it.
Of course,
it's why
it doesn't
you can kind of almost cheese the game in a lot of ways. Like, and that's why I always hesitate to say it's a hard game. Like, the game is also kind of as hard as you want to make it.
Yeah, but it's also, you can cheese it, but it's interesting because the way it's designed, even cheesing has limits. So, one strategy that Swinny and I use is we upgrade the Uchigatana to 15 early on, and it makes huge parts of the game a breeze. But you still come across certain bosses that are practically immune to it.
Yeah.
Not quite immune, but it makes your life really, really difficult. So it's balanced in such a way that it allows you to experiment and try different things, but at the same time, you can't just pick one thing and hope and think that you're just going to be able to breeze through the whole game because you found the secret to the game. Something like that. It's really well balanced, I think, in that sense.
I guess just in terms of difficulty, they give you a lot of paths to get through, and some of it, some people may agree with, some people don't. But there's lots of weapons you can get early on that make the early parts of the game pretty easy honestly.
Like the Drake sword.
The Drake sword, but also
the Drake sword. I love the Drake sword.
But also the +5 lightning spear that you get in Sen's Fortress. You know, you can essentially get through the middle part of the game and Analondo and all that with that spear if you upgrade a little bit. They kind of hand that stuff to you on a platter, and then they've got the ability for players that struggle against the bosses, you know, you can summon. And that stuff is embedded to make it so that the people being summoned also, you know, get something out of it. But there's this really great sense of camaraderie and, you know, as Soler says, jolly cooperation. And it kind of helps to ease the, you know, if people are having difficulty, there's ways to do it. And the thing is, this game is a tough game. And for some people, this game is going to be too difficult. But there's a couple of points, you know, we talk about Smaug and Ornstein fight. That's probably the biggest barrier for most people in the game, or like the archers leading up to them as well. There's parts that are really tough and unfair.
Those archers, but you know what's weird?
As we talk about, the sense of accomplishment when you get past it is kind of like invaluable, or it's like you can't. It's indescribable. It's like, oh man, I finally beat Smaug and Ornstein by myself or whatever. And it's like, oh my god, like the relief that you feel is just so fantastic.
Because just before you jump in, Mike, like two really quick point on that. Honestly, there's probably only 2 games where like I got so into them that I was going nuts when I achieved something in it, which is Trials HD, which is the 360 live arcade release. That, you know, myself and a friend of the show, Joe Jives, who's infinitely better at video games, you know, beat Battletoads in a weekend when he was like 10 years old, only 3 tries. And like, you know, we were competing and going back and forth, and he beat me in the end with it all. But like, we were going crazy. We were like top 50 in the world on like things that had like 1 million people competing in it. Right. So I was like super into that. And when I got something in that game, I was like, yeah. And the other one is like Rocket League, where I was like heading up to champion rank, and just, you know, sometimes you score a goal and you've like planned it out and you're just like, fuck yeah, that was so good. And this is actually the 3rd game that made me like, you know, when I've defeated certain bosses or did something in the game, I was like, fuck, thank God I got through this past it, you know, because it feels earned, you know, and
that's that's
you
what
play
I was saying.
in your way, but you earn it, you know what I mean? You're
you earn it,
I've done this, you know, good.
Yeah. And in fact, it felt bad when I was summoning in certain bosses because I lost the satisfaction of you know, feeling like you actually earned that achievement.
But see, I love that about the game as well. And I totally agree with where Swinny's coming from. There's plenty of stuff in the game to make it more possible to get through things, right? Yeah. And they don't necessarily punish you for doing it.
No.
Whereas some games, I think they're very opinionated on like, oh, you've done this, so you can't get a special thing or whatever it is. They don't really punish you for that, which I really like.
Yeah, this one doesn't, but it also gives you the choice. If you want to do it the hard way, go do it the hard way. That's perfectly fine. If you want to summon and get a bit of help, and by the way, it's not like it makes it easy. It doesn't, because if I remember correctly, the boss's healths go up, and yes, it's easier. I think everyone would agree to play co-op on certain bosses, but it's not like it makes it super easy. It's nothing like that. You can still get completely smashed.
Well, also, they make it so, you know, you have to be in human form to be able to summon, which means if you're playing online, which honestly is I know Indigod's position didn't allow for it, but I would really recommend to play online because it gives you another, I guess,
dimension to the game.
It is.
That's the word I was thinking of. But it makes you susceptible to invasions. So there is some risk reward there. If you're playing in human form, then you can get invaded, and that's a whole other thing that we won't get into. But it's just, I think the way that they balance those different paths through the game is just really
well made.
And even when you summon like an NPC, the NPC can die on the way to getting to the boss anyway. Like, it's kind of funny the way it's all structured. But look, for me personally, I didn't summon anything. But that, again, I feel like the game allows you to play by the rules that you set yourself. So for me, it was like, no,
hard mode.
I want to play it. I want to beat the whole thing. I kind of played it half blind, half not blind. You know, because I didn't want to get stuck, because I wanted to get through the game. And then I thought, you know what, I'll play this game again later and just do all the bits that I haven't done. But it's really cool and really satisfying. Like just playing by whatever rules you want to play that game.
I was just going to quickly say earlier on is those archers. I don't want to spoil what or where, but I remember the first time I played it. Oh my god, you son of a dude! The number of times that they screwed you over, and then when I played it recently, in between, I got past that part a number of times. But when I played it recently, I just breezed past them first go, and I'm like, oh. I can't believe how hard this used to be. It's so easy.
It's funny to me because the first time I ever played Dark Souls, I got past them really easily, and then on New Game Plus, I got stuck for ages, and I'm like, and it made me really love that section. It's honestly, in a lot of games, you would say the Archer section is a horrible piece of design, but in Dark Souls, it's like this really memorable encounter that nearly, I'd say 70% of people are probably going to struggle with from the first, few attempts on it. Yeah. But once you know the trick, it's like, oh, it's the Archer section. Let's see everyone do this trick again, It's really cool.
That brings me to, unless you guys want to cover something else, to the level design. So
yeah.
Number one, holistically, the level design is incredible because it's one big world that is interconnected. There are parts, to a degree. There are parts where you teleport and stuff, but to a large degree, a lot of the world is interconnected, and it's a single big chunk that's seamless. Again, there's a few parts where you teleport and stuff, but the big holistic world is actually interconnected, and it's quite incredible from a design perspective when you're going through the level and you go and you keep fighting and you go through this cavern and all of a sudden you come out and you're like, hang on a minute, this just connected to this part at the start. Oh my god, this is incredible. And then you like trying to kind of visualize it in your head and make a little map in your brain. So I thought that from a world and level design perspective was incredible. And of course, where the enemies are placed is brilliant. There's so many parts where you're like, you sneaky bastards, like where the developers perfectly put an enemy just to screw you up. It's brilliant. And if you don't know it's there and you don't see it coming, there's so many times when if you do a complete blind playthrough, it's just perfect where things are put just to screw you over.
Can I just add to that bit? Because when you guys were blind when you played it. You were truly blind. Like,
yeah, 100%
the game came out without, which is crazy to me.
No wikis, nothing.
Yeah, whereas I could just go on YouTube and Google anything. Oh, how do I get through this in Blighttown or whatever? But I didn't know almost anything about the game, and I played a little bit of Demon's Souls beforehand, which is very structured around, you go into the central hub and you go off to the offshoot worlds through the gates. So I kind of had that in my head. And then when I was playing Dark Souls, you get through the start and then you get into like the main crux of the world. And I was playing it. Okay, go through. And then when it looped back, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, Jesus, this whole fucking thing is connected. These pricks. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is super cool. And it's not all of it like, not really to criticize the game. Like there's bits that feel very like, it's kind of like offshoots, you know what I mean? It's like,
definitely offshoots,
here's the gateway to this bit. And then it's like this whole world that's separate. But man, it's like so cool. The bits world that are really connected, it's super cool. It's so sick.
But most of it is completely interconnected. I mean, from Sense Fortress when you get teleported and stuff, it isn't, I guess. But the vast, would you say the vast majority, Swinny, or like 70% of the world feels interconnected?
A lot of it is, and a big part is not just what you play, but also what you can see. So, and a lot of this you don't notice the first playthrough. Unless you're just staring or looking for it, is that you can, for instance, the Firelink Shrine, you can look down and see areas that you're going to get to. And sure, they're
like New Londo and stuff.
Yeah, obviously they're very, they're like very basic representations of them, but you can look up and you can see stuff, it's just being able to see locations from other locations is a trait that they brought across to the other games in this series, and it makes everything feel, as you said, connected even outside of these cool shortcuts. But there's if anyone's that's played through Dark Souls and is really keen, there's some great videos out there. So of people dissecting the world design. So you've got Game Maker's Toolkit has done great video on it as part of the Boss Keys series.
Can I just say about that? Because one thing that, and it sounds so dopey, because I love that channel. I think anyone who loves gaming loves that channel. One of the greatest things about finishing a game like this is all these videos, because I'm very anti-spoiler, like so anti-spoiler. I would not listen to our commentary about this game unless I'd played the game, right? And it was so cool for me to go, oh, now I can watch all these videos, like, you know, the Game Maker Toolkit on like what he's saying about the world design and everything. Like, it was like Moorish. I was watching so much about Dark Souls after finally beating it.
And Illusory Wall has done really great videos on the world of Dark Souls where they actually take 3D software and put the maps in them and actually connect them all up. And it's just great. And it set a standard for the series that honestly, it's struggled to reach since. But kind of they've done it on purpose. But I won't get too much in that because I don't want to spoil the eventual experience for Indigot. But to me,
like with Dark Souls 2 and 3.
Dark Souls 2 and 3, they take
and
a
more
bit
so
of a...
2, right?
No, 2 I feel is more interconnected. I feel like 3 is more
I don't want to get
like
into it. I don't want to
Demon
spoil. I
Souls.
don't want to. I don't want to spoil it. So
Okay.
it's just they've taken a different approach, and
Okay.
Yeah.
just
It's not bad, by the way. It's nothing bad. It's just a different approach.
But
Okay.
to me, the biggest testament to the game's world and level design is that, like, and this wasn't after this. This is after the only like maybe 2 playthroughs. Like, I can essentially map the whole game out in my head.
It's nuts, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
I've beaten Dark Souls 2 probably about 6 times. I've beaten Dark Souls 3 probably about 3 times. Like, when I'm saying 3 times, I'm saying like new game plus, whatever, right? And
So
I
6 times
can't say the same about them, that I could sit there and if someone asked me to like start drawing out a map or start picturing it in my head, I couldn't map the whole game out, whereas I pretty much can in Dark Souls. And that is such a testament to this world's design.
Well, it's just like the graphics of the game and, you know, how things are presented in the game. It's so amazing to me. Like, when I finally got up to an Orlando, that's right, yeah? An Orlando. I'm thinking of the Formula One driver, Lando Norris.
Yes, we can now share the Analondo song.
Top to bottom.
I was just like, oh my God, like, what the hell is this game? Like, just the art design, everything was so different and so distinct. And I think even though, you know, I guess if you're just watching like a speed run, like we've got as B-roll, it kind of, you know, you could argue it looks all the same, but something about the music and how everything's presented, it feels all very distinct.
From a technical standpoint, the graphics are probably the game's weakest area, but it really has its moments. And as you said, the art design is trumps the technical like limitations of, you know, even when the game came out, it didn't look amazing, but it looked memorable. It made you like this. I love this world. I love the way it looks. Doesn't matter if it hasn't got, you know, millions of polygons or whatever, you know, in their character models, and their lips don't move when they talk, and you know, things like that. So but,
no, it's just like, and you know, I guess going on the builds, it's quite funny because it was like a religious war with you guys, because obviously you guys are so familiar with the series. And I was constantly asking, you know, oh, how should I build the character? What should, and you know, you're like, oh, do this or do that, or have summons or have that. And I was like, oh, I kind of just went with, you know, my style is just, I want to whack people. So, and look, I did learn that I have to parry, I have to block in this game. So I kind of balanced those two things out a little bit. But what did I do? I just went crazy on endurance. Like I was maxing out endurance like insane amount. Until I wanted to get a certain halberd. I was like a halberd main. And then, you know, I found one that was even more powerful. I'm like, oh God.
One, yeah.
You know. And then I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have to like do something different to like boost up some of the stats. But I haven't even gone into sorcery or anything in this game.
So that's the thing about it. It's worth. So when I played it again on the Switch, I did a sorcery build because I had never played a full sorcery build.
Yeah.
The very, very first time I played the game, I did a hybrid build, and it's interesting because the game, it's weird. I can't even like exactly define it. In a way, it penalizes you for spreading yourself too thin, and in a way, it can help. It's really weird. Like overall, I would recommend you don't spread yourself too thin. Especially, do not spread yourself thin in terms of doing sorcery as well as doing like a faith build as well as doing that will probably screw you over. Absolutely.
I don't think there's any benefit to spreading
None
stuff
at
in
all
it.
whatsoever.
There's a few weapons that will need some pretty high requirements for both strength and dex.
Yeah.
But there's some weapons that need like high faith as well. But the thing is with this game is that this is the kind of game where playing with the Wikipedia or the Dark Souls wiki or whatever can actually be beneficial when you're talking about, okay, I want to have a certain build. Where's the weapons that are going to take advantage of this? I don't think it takes away from it. Now, obviously, people want to have the experience blind completely. Then that's great. But
it's a fine line between using the wiki too much, I reckon.
No, but the thing is, the way this game is, there's items that you can only get once. If you miss it, you can't get it again.
Yeah, of course.
There's items that if you upgrade the wrong stuff, you can't upgrade the other items. Like there's limited Twinkling Titanite. There's limited stuff, upgrade materials. So
oh yeah, totally. But I think the very first time you play this game, I still think you benefit from going as blind as possible because it's part of the experience.
Oh yeah,
not knowing what to do, where to go, you could screw yourself up. The only thing I would say, if you do play it completely blind and you haven't played this game yet, is don't spread yourself too thin across everything.
No, not at all.
Pick a type of build. Go strength, go dex, go sorcery. Stick to that sort of archetype, and that will make your life a bit more bearable.
Yeah, but I just wanted to, because you said, oh, there's some benefits spreading yourself thin. That's why I just wanted to say I don't think there's any much benefits.
No, there's not. Spreading yourself completely thin, probably no benefits. Cool. But being in a position where you're kind of a bit of a hybrid can help. Because I find, for example, in my last playthrough, where I had the Uchi, there were a couple of bosses and fights that became a little harder because those enemies were impervious to slash attacks. So the Uchi wasn't particularly as useful against them. So, for example, Nidotorius in the DLC is really difficult with just the Uchi. So I'm having to... Whereas when I played him with my... On the Switch, when I was a sorcery build, it was a piece of cake. It was like, wow, this is like one of the hardest bosses in the game. This is ridiculously easy. So it's interesting how it balances itself out like that.
Maybe we can just talk about bosses a little bit then, if we're talking about bosses.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the bosses are a huge part of the Dark Souls series. I would actually argue that Dark Souls 1 probably has the weakest overall group of bosses, simply because there's a lot of bosses that are very average and some of them are very badly designed, like your Capra Demon and stuff like that. But they really hit their stride after this game, but the DLC bosses is where you can look at the template for where the series went with them moving forward. But to me, the standouts, you got your Great Grey Wolf Sif fight, very memorable. Gwyn, Smaug, Ornstein, to me, they were really, really great, memorable fights. But when you start to break down a lot of the other bosses, there's some that you're like, yeah, especially with forward knowledge of where they go with the series in the future, including Bloodborne and stuff. But obviously, if you struggle with anything, you're gonna struggle with the bosses, honestly.
So I definitely hit barriers with the bosses, but for whatever reason, I don't feel like the bosses were really the biggest hurdle necessarily for me. And I felt like for the most part, it was fairly the strategy for the bosses to beat the bosses was, I don't know, not that deep, but the bosses were really cool. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love the designs and everything. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about, how the fight plays out and stuff.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I feel like a lot of the bosses to me were, jump, roll, dodge, when they try to strike, hit them a few times, get the endurance back, repeat.
Yeah, it's honestly, that's the way it's going to be for generally the series. But yeah, there's a few that are very different, and there's one that we'll talk about very soon that's very different. But but it's it's more like the mechanics and their attack patterns, and I guess the environment that they're in. The series really, it gets crazy with its bosses, but the strategy is still going to be very similar between them. So.
Because just on the Capra Demon, and also I don't know if you're about to talk about a bit, Ornstein and Smo. Like, those two fights, the reason why, like, the one thing about Dark Souls is, I feel like whenever you can go one-on-one, you're always like, it's more just like, are you in the flow of the game to beat the enemy, right? Where the game, to me, becomes really, really difficult is when multiple enemies are attacking you. And even like basic enemies, if you get kind of like stuck and stun locked, like you can get killed by like the most basic enemies in this game.
Yep.
And I felt like with the Capra Demon, the whole point of that fight was just, how do I kill these damn dogs? Once I got through the dogs, like I was able to beat it pretty comfortably. And then, yeah, Ornstein and Smo was like, how can I separate them, keep an eye on both of them, kill one of them, and then, like, you know, isolate. Because once I got to, like, just the one by itself, I almost beat it the first time and then I beat it the next time.
It's actually funny with the Capra Demon. I sent Mike a clip, but I didn't want to spoil anything for you at the time. For the first time ever, in my last playthrough, I cheesed the boss by the infamous way of standing outside the boss door, aiming up and chucking dung pies.
I've heard about this.
Over the door until it gets turned toxic. And then you kill him without even jumping in. And I just wanted to experience that one time of chucking like 30 dung pies at the Capra Demon over the door.
Capra Demon, I feel, is the first real gate in that game. Don't you reckon? It's, to me, I remember it was the first far out. This boss is a pain. A real pain for people.
And the funny thing is, the Capra Demon's completely optional as well.
I know, but it still feels like, oh, you got to do this bit, and yeah.
I think, like, is it the Taurus Demon?
Yeah, Taurus on the bridge. Yeah.
I think Taurus Demon's the first.
And I think first one.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, right? Everyone's different because it
is, yeah, and it depends.
I think the Taurus is the first one. The Capra Demon, I think it was just like luck. I think I beat it in the first or second go.
But the Capra Demon is just more. Well, the second go, that's pretty good. It's just because it's such a confined space, and you got those stupid dogs, and it's fast, and it.
Like I said, I think it was a bit of luck. I think it was a bit of luck. Like, I was able to get rid of the dogs really quickly, and then I just, you know, had a few good hits on the Capra Demon. But I think really the Ornstein and Smo fight, to me, it's like, you know, when I got through that, it was pretty much level from that point for me personally. But I could imagine people giving up on that fight. Like, that fight was frustrating to me. I was like, fuck. When I got through that, I was like pretty happy.
Because you do get different items depending on who you kill first.
Yeah, correct.
Spoiler. Yeah. And I think the first time I didn't really care because I just played it not knowing anything like that. And then the second time I played the game, by which stage it was out for a while, and I read the wiki about it and stuff. And I'm like, oh, what? You can get this other thing for it? Are you kidding me? This looks so much better. And then I was sitting there trying to get that thing, and I think it was harder trying to get, which is Ornstein stuff, I found. It was easier, I think, to get Smo stuff. But with the Taurus Demon, it was quite funny because I did a really quick start of the game, and I played as a sorcerer, and I got to the Taurus Demon, and I realized that I had used up all my magic by the time I got to him. So all I had was a dagger with a sorcerer. Dude, it took me like, I'm gonna probably exaggerate here, but at least 10 minutes to beat that boss. He didn't hit me once, but I just sit there chipping away. It was dealing like almost no damage at all to this guy. And it took ages just sitting there under him, like trying to basically chop his balls off with a dagger.
This is the Taurus Demon, yeah?
This is the Taurus Demon, yeah, because it's so useless, that weapon at the start.
The funny part is if you position yourself right, you can get the Taurus Demon to jump off and kill himself.
Oh, I should have just done that. I didn't realize I was sitting there for 10 minutes with a bloody dagger.
So I just quickly want to mention the story a bit and the lore of this game. The lore behind Dark Souls is one of the game's biggest hidden treasures. Because when you play through this game, like, I have no idea what's going on. They do not spell anything out for you. Everything's told through some very fractured NPC conversations. And, you know, there's an intro at the start, but whatever, like, when you're playing the game, the majority of the lore is told through the item descriptions. And when you start diving into, like, community, like, messiahs, like Epic Name Bro and Vati Vidya, like, their videos, especially Vati's, where he breaks down the characters and the stories, and help you start to piece together this world and history. It's a template that a lot of games have now copied. So we talk about Souls likes and the fact that this game together with Dark Souls kind of started a bit of a action RPG subgenre. But it's not just the gameplay that a lot of these games have taken, it's the approach to the minimalist narrative design, where they're telling this story but bits and pieces, and they're not saying anything up to you in front. Like, outside of some certain transitions and maybe the ending and maybe some boss introductions, there's really no cutscenes in Dark Souls. They're not telling you the story. You're experiencing it. And it's very possible you won't experience any of it until you kind of start looking a bit deeper. But when there's such a world, and the sequels, expand on this in some ways, and some ways they tell their own stories. But I just wanted to put a call out for how they handle the narrative in this game and the lore.
And it's also really cool it's not heavy-handed at all. It's like I missed a whole bunch of it, but what I saw was really, really cool and really interesting. And again, like, so much of this game is about giving the player choice in how far they want to go and how deep they want to go and how they want to interpret things as well, which I really loved. And even like the way it ends, like, I thought was interesting, and understanding what the choices are and what you can do with the ending. It's quite funny. But yeah, no, it's an amazing game.
So
choices are really I
was just going to say that. So we talked a lot of great stuff about Dark Souls. I want to talk about.
Don't you dare!
I want to talk about some of the bad.
Okay, fine.
All right, and we've wrapped up because there's nothing bad.
And
we're done.
as I've made it known, this is one of my favorite games of all time. But Dark Souls is way far from a perfect game. It has two prominent examples of some of the worst video game design I've ever seen in a modern video game.
Okay, hit me with it.
And these are not going to be a surprise to most people that have played through the game. First of all, Lost Izalith. So the area that's essentially the chaos area in the game, the Witch of Izalith, the lava area, is well known to essentially being unfinished. Not what they originally designed and rushed.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like that, yeah.
The whole area, there's areas where you can stand, like the entry to the boss, you can stand and see that they're missing entire textures from areas.
Yep.
The way and the fact that if you don't take the top path through Lost Izalith, having to go through the lava area with the weird half demon, the half like dinosaurs and missing their heads, it's easily the worst designed area in any Souls game outside of some of the Dark Souls 2 DLC. But the other worst example of video game design is the Bed of Chaos boss fight. So the Bed of Chaos is pretty much regarded almost unanimously as the worst boss in the Soul series.
Really?
Yeah, it's easily considered, like, you check any list and it's going to be, if not number one, it's going to be number two in
that's good
pretty
to
much
know.
everything. Yeah, and just simply because it's a boss fight so bad that there's progression in it, where if you die, it will retain the fact that you've destroyed parts of it. So what I really want to call out is the fact that this game is amazing in that it's so good despite those bad design choices. And it's like, I still enjoy playing through those areas because I enjoy the lore, like the Witch of Izalith and the Bed of Chaos, like the lore behind that boss is super interesting. It's just unfortunate the boss fight itself is absolute trash.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, the Bed of Chaos one, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but I did think that was the worst boss. I think I said to you guys at the start, or like when I was playing through it, it just felt like just total bullshit, that boss.
Yeah.
Where, like, there's nothing I could do, and it would sometimes just, like, hit me, and I'd be flying into the gaps that it would create.
Yeah.
The other one is, and it was an optional boss. It's the... which one was it? It's the one that's in the water, and it's like the Hydra.
The Hydra, yeah.
Oh, the Hydra, yeah.
So I'm
They
like
were
bashing
easy.
them, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. And I was getting closer to them, And then it was like, woo! I just fell into the water or something.
Yeah, but come on, that's clever though.
there
I
are-
love
But dude,
that.
I couldn't tell. Like maybe it was my brightness settings or something
No,
like
it's probably
that.
brightness
It
settings. You
looked
can definitely
like
tell.
I couldn't tell anything was different.
I-
like
You
with
can
what I was
definitely
walking.
tell,
I
but that's
agree.
brilliant.
I agree. There's examples of really bad game design in Dark Souls.
But I don't think that's bad game design. I think that's brilliant. The fact that it fucks you up like that. I thought it was really good.
I would
Because you do it
agree.
once and you're like, oh, I see. There's an edge there. Fair enough. And
Yeah,
then
Yeah,
you
but
play
like,
again,
no,
and you
that's,
learn.
I don't know. I don't.
No, I think that's part
I think
of the
that's cheap.
game.
I
think
would
that's cheap.
agree that the
this is-
Hydra isn't a well designed.
Yeah, but come on. I don't think the
all.
boss itself is like it's a bit dodgy, but I think the fact that there's a giant Hydra sticking its heads out of the water. Do you not think that maybe that water's a little deeper than where you're standing right now? Like, it's fair enough that it kind of doesn't gradually go down.
Yeah, but
it's
that's
just
no
falls
water in
straight
the
into
world.
it.
No water in the world has like no difference between surface
No, but-
level and then thousands of meters down.
No, but I think that's part of what makes the game like that. It's like
there'd
at
be
the start of
waves
the-
and everything, dude. Like it'd be
I know,
crashing
I know,
against the
I know.
sides.
But I still think it's a brilliant part of the game where you're like, you son of a, and then you know and you learn, and the second time it's not as bad.
Yeah, but just going back to the Bed of Chaos boss, like that was one boss. I was just like, if I could just skip this boss, I'd do it. It's so bullshit. I had to play that boss quite a few times just because every time, like when he said, there's something you do in the boss and that progresses you almost to the second phase, let's just say it. And then like I kept running down and just dying almost instantly. Like I got to a point where I took off all my gear to be as fast as possible. I was just trying to get down to like kill the boss. And I'm like, this is fucking annoying.
Yeah.
It just wasn't hard. It was just frustrating.
That's exactly what it is. It's just annoying. It's a bad example of game design, and I think I had to call it out. Like this,
that's fair
this
enough.
game
That's fair
has
enough,
its flaws, just like all of the games on our Game Some Other Year nominee
Yeah, of
list.
course.
But to me, Dark Souls, it shines brighter in the sense that everything else about the game is so memorable and honestly well designed that it gets past that.
Yeah.
I honestly have got like, I think I've lost brain cells or something, but I'll play games, I'll see footage of games, I'm like, I don't remember this. Like, I'll see something, I'm like, I've played this game, I've beaten this game, I don't remember this at all, right? Or when he will say something, I'm like, I have no recollection. Whereas this game, watching footage, and fair enough, I have played this game recently, but everything is so visually and distinct in level design. It's like one homogenous thing where it's just like so memorable how it all sits together.
The only problem becomes if you play the original Demon Souls and you play Dark Souls 2 and then Dark Souls 3. I know it doesn't happen to Swinny, but there are certain parts where I'm like, shit, did I play that in Dark Souls 3 or was that part in Dark Souls 2? Or was it in the recent Demon? Like there's a couple of bosses like that where I'm like, I don't remember if that boss was in 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever. That I've had that problem before.
I don't want to spoil stuff for myself, so don't.
No. This isn't spoiling anything at all. No.
Well, don't comment about what I'm about to say because there might be a reason why this is the case. But so don't.
And I'll
spoil
keep a
it.
blank face on the video.
Yeah, I'll
as
try
well.
not to look at you. But every now and then, when I'd like do my half blind, half not blind playthrough, I would like Google something, and then it would be like come up in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3. I was like, what? Like this area is in Dark Souls 3 with the exact same name. And I'm like, okay, I don't like that seems a bit weird, but yeah, I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole yet. Because look,
because you got to play 2 and 3.
well, I don't know if I'll play 2.
Oh, what? 2's brilliant. I love 2 though.
I think I'll play 3 and Demon Souls, and then if I have
Why
time,
not
I'll
2?
Play... Dude, like I don't have much time to play games.
Yeah, but the series, it's just such a good series. 2. What would you say, Swinny? I love 2.
Look, I've already told Into God. I think Dark Souls 2 is a great game. If you had to choose between 2 and 3, I would recommend
If you
3.
had to choose.
If you had
But
to
the
choose.
reality is eventually you're going to play both, I reckon. It might take
know.
10 years, but you'll play both.
Maybe.
So I would probably just do 2 and
So,
then jump.
I don't know. Are we at our final thoughts? I've got one final thought.
Yeah, let's go final thoughts.
So my final thought is Dark Souls is not a game for everyone, but it's a game that I would recommend everyone give a chance because if it clicks with you, there's a very high chance it'll probably end up being one of the best games you've ever played.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, you know what? I can't say it any better than that, Swinny.
Neither
Like,
can I. That's a good wrap up.
Wholeheartedly agree with where you're coming from, and
Ditto.
I will, 2 hours and something into the podcast, fully acknowledge that you were right, Swinny. You were right 10 years ago that I should have played this game, because this is the
kept telling you.
exact kind of game that would have dragged me back into gaming at the time. It
What have we done?
genuinely addressed everything that was wrong, in my view, with games, and it was almost the antithesis of AAA games back then, and to a degree right now. Although there are a lot of inspiration around Dark Souls. An amazing game. And
Maybe good you didn't get into it, though, because if you did, maybe your entire life would have been different. You wouldn't have the wife, the children, the house.
It's true.
You would have been, I don't know, a streamer in a bathtub on Twitch or something. I don't know.
Wow.
I like it went from hot tubs to bathtubs. It's just
Whatever they
accidentally
allow.
sadder.
I don't know what they allow.
He doesn't have the money for a hot tub. Let's go to bathtub
I'm
route.
just going to blow up one and put it in my room. All right. That leads us off to